Hey everyone, so today's video we're going to be doing a epic PvE tier list. I've already done the legendary PvP, PvE, and I've already done the epic PvP tier list, but I wanted to bring you guys the epic PvE tier list today. Something that has been a common occurrence in Ace is the necessary characters to progress along in dungeons and things like that. But that's usually just focused on the end game. So in the early to mid game, and even sometimes in the end game in specific areas that aren't, dungeon related, epics can actually serve a pretty good purpose. And they're also much easier to get to their max potential because epic books and things like that are easier to come by, and then also additional copies of these characters are much easier to come by than additional copies of legendaries because you pull them at a higher rate. So with that being said, I figured we'd talk about some of these heroes today, and hopefully this helps you guys understand where I view some of these heroes in regards to their potential for PvE content. So without further ado, let's start talking about these heroes. So in the S category, we have Bocce to start things off. So Bocce, as most people know, is just absolutely amazing in basically all areas of the game. I think the developers probably made an oopsie when they made this guy, but I think it was one of those characters that it was too late and they couldn't walk it back, or there might have been some issues with the community. But anyway, Bocce ignores 100% of defense if he uses his roller bomb, and he has two ways of doing that. One, if he attacks the highest health hero on the field, he will then trigger his roller bomb, and it ignores 100% of their defense. So I think this was meant to be a PvP hero, hence his masteries, which have True Strike, which is one of the downsides to Bocce, actually. It serves no purpose, which is a bit of a bummer. But other than that, he's able to serve as a wave clear even, in Void Tower or Doom Tower, Void Tower, Void Tower, and also in Ash Magisteria. He also can do the same thing in like Witch of the Wind. He can do something like that in Queen of Tides as well. So he has a lot of purposes. If he's one of the heroes that you're pulling early and you're pulling additional copies, he can serve purposes in all those areas. He's obviously best in class in Rift of Chaos Fireboss. He can also serve some purpose in Guild versus Environment. He's not very good there, but he can be used. One of the downsides to Bocce is he does need A5, because that's when he's ignoring 100% of defense instead of 80. But anyway, very good hero, definitely an S tier hero in PvE, one of the premier epics for sure. Next is Baron. So Baron is your ideal wave clearer. She just has so much damage on her skills. She ignores 30% of defense if heroes are 50% health or higher. She also does a really big second AoE ability if 4 or more heroes are on the field. It does have a 1-turn cooldown, but it's still absolutely amazing. And when she's A5, she gives herself really big boosts. But I will say, even without A5, she's still really good, and compare with a lot of really good heroes in the game to just shred through waves. And then she's one of your ideal AoE clearers for Void Tower. So really cool. Hitoshi, I think, is also S tier for a couple reasons. One, he's probably the easiest epic for people to gear. He has that self-crit rate. He's one of the heroes that you get for free, so you're already kind of off to the races. And if you pull one additional copy, he gets that attack boost. If he ever gets to A2, he just gets so much better with increasing his attack. It makes scaling up on dungeons like Queen of Tides or Witch of the Wind or even Tulpa, much easier. And he's a great Void Tower clearer. So I do think he deserves an S tier, just because he can be used in all aspects of those dungeons other than Ash Magisteria. But there's plenty of loopholes around Ash, as I've mentioned in multiple videos. But Hitoshi is definitely an S tier character from the epic side for PvE. Along that note is Nathalia. So Nathalia is a hero that's just been around since the very beginning of the game, and she's still absolutely amazing. The only downside to Nathalia is she truly does need that A2 to maximize her potential, because she just gets so much more damage output out of it. The other kind of negative to Nathalia is, unless you're pairing her with specific heroes, she will need a guard set to really maximize her true potential. But with so many good heroes introduced recently, she has a lot of heroes that she can pair with to activate her passive to give her the additional buffs. The thing here is, as you see, like the two premier wave clearers are Hitoshi and Baron. So they struggle with fire heroes. So Nathalia is a really nice complement to them. She's great in Ash Magisteria if you ever want to scale up on your own and not use friend supports for Rosalys and things like that. Nathalia is a fantastic hero there. She's also serves the same purpose as Hitoshi, wave clearer in Ash, Queen of Tides, Witch of the Wind, and then also Void Tower. So really great there. So Onamaros is also a really good Void Tower hero. That's where he's used specifically, but I have him in the S tier because he is the easy mode, for Void Tower Mythic, and that alone I think gives him a S tier. The fact that he makes you, now there are some levels that get a little tricky, and I'm actually going to make some videos on a Void Tower Mythic clear. We'll speed through that and fast forward, and wherever we get stuck, or where I know most people get stuck, we will pause and walk through how to beat that. But being able to get a free legendary every month off of that legendary stone for a Void Tower Mythic clear, I think makes Onamaros an S tier by default. So in the A tier, we have Foodie. So Foodie is a fantastic hero. A lot of great buffs. Also some really nice mechanics on its trait. Removing negative effects, healing, putting up blocks which count as positive effects. This hero is a premier hero for Rift of Chaos Water. Also fantastic hero in the Mini Tower Dark boss in Guild vs. Environment. And it's really just a good progression hero. Being able to have all of those heals and damage mitigation on your team is really important to keeping your Hitoshis, your Barons, your Nathalias alive. Also the fact that it's a light hero, so it's not a weak affinity to any of the main 3 dungeons, so it can be used in Tulba, Ash, or Queen. Just a premier hero. So Jacob makes the A list primarily for his ability to just be a guild boss progression hero. He's also really good in Guild vs. Environment. He's been outclassed a little bit lately with some of the legendary heroes introduced, but I still use Jacob in my guild boss team, and I still use him in a couple Guild vs. Environment teams as well. So he's the premier progression champ from an epic standpoint for newer and mid-game accounts, and he's definitely worth the A tier. I think he's worth your epic books, to help you scale in Guild Boss, because Guild Boss does actually give some really valuable rewards once you're hitting specific levels. So Jonathan is a hero that I think a lot of people have disregarded. He has been outclassed by heroes like Badmar and things like that, but the thing that Jonathan does have going for him that Badmar doesn't is he does an AoE attack down and defense down, and the cooldowns actually aren't that bad, because on his S2 he heals himself and grants a bonus turn at the end of the round. So he actually shuffles through his abilities pretty well. If any of your heroes are hit by an AoE, he gives them shields, so he's a really great progression champ. He can be fantastic in Ash Magisteria and Queen of Tides. Same thing as Witch of the Wind. So he has a lot of applications in dungeons that people overshadow just because most people nowadays have Badmar. And Badmar doesn't need focus. He also puts no positive effects. He is more tailored to the end game, and the people that I play with, in this game are definitely end game. So Jonathan has been overshadowed, but he is great for early to mid game progression, and he still even transitions well into the end game. So fantastic hero here. I have Karina in the A tier as well. I have her here because she can be used on endgame dungeons. So if you are using her early, she's still a great progression hero for Queen of Tides. She can be used in Guild versus Environment as well. I don't think she's really a Void Tower hero or anything like that, but the fact that she is really valuable in Queen of Tides early on, as well as Guild versus Environment, and then she progresses throughout the game, I think she's worthy of the A status. She's also part of a cheese composition for Ash Magisteria if you have Vengeful Hassle. So the fact that she can help you clear stage 20 dungeons, I think goes without saying that she should be in the A tier. So Marion Shadowblood is here, same reason for Jacob. They are just your premier kind of guild boss progression heroes. They pair so well together. Anytime that Marion Shadowblood has a ally attack, she has the possibility of joint attacking, and her basic ability actually does damage based on max health, true damage on bosses or enemies. So she's really good on the early stages where max health is still applied. So in guild boss, in any of the dungeon stages, 16 and less, she can be a really nice progression hero. Definitely should not be overshadowed. She's also great in faction challenges and Batwolf. Same goes for Jacob. I didn't mention that, but also really great there. So I think she is a fantastic hero in the early stages and mid game. She does fall off towards the end game a little bit. I no longer use her really that much. I do use her in faction challenges and Batwolf still, but other than that, she does fall off. So I also think Santis is in the A tier for sure. A case can even be made that Santis is in the S tier because stages 16 and below, she can be used with Gangelo or even Dark Selene to clear almost all of those dungeons. So she's fantastic there. The reason why I have her in the A tier as well is because she scales all the way into the end game with Rift of Chaos Water. She can also be used in Gemini Dragon. So some really nice applications there. Poison does end up becoming a bit of a downside in the late game, but it still has its applications, in some of the endgame content like Guild Boss and Rift of Chaos Water. So she's definitely an A tier hero, arguably S tier, but I think A tier is probably the accurate location for her. So in the B tier, we have, I always forget this guy's name, Alistair. Alistair is actually a pretty good hero. He does get a bunch of different bonus attacks, which I think is really viable in Witch of the Wind, who has that rage mechanic. He's a pretty good clearer, damage dealer for Void Tower as well. It would be weird, though, for you to utilize an Alistair over like a Baron or Hitoshi or Nathalia for your wave clearing, even like Anamaros in Void Tower, just because, he's a light epic. You're most likely not going to have many copies of him in comparison to the top heroes here. He's more of a niche hero, but he does have the ability to be played in Witch of the Wind. He can also be an okay hero in Guild Boss as well to keep the rage mechanic down. So I wouldn't sleep on him, but he's definitely not as good as the other heroes that we've introduced, obviously, but still pretty solid in a couple areas of PvE. He's really good in PvP as well, but this is a PvE tier list, so he is more on the B tier range. So Andre used to be absolutely fantastic in certain areas of the game, but he's since fallen off. But I think he still has a place in PvE. He's really good in faction challenges. He's great for clearing some of those waves in faction challenges because in his stage, it's the mechanic where people die and then come back, so he can kind of chain off and do 3 separate attacks in a turn. He also has the no positive effects, which is really important on those Void Tower bosses, the bankers that I showed the other day. He can be very good there. He can even have some application in Rift of Chaos Fire early on, maybe stages 1 through 4, to put up the no positive effects, remove that crit rate mechanic, from the boss. So all of those entail a pretty solid hero for PvE. I don't think he's worth books anymore, but he's still a pretty solid character in multiple aspects of the PvE content in the game. Antinua is actually really good. She's one of the heroes that can be used to one-shot specific content. Early on, stages 1 through 16 in dungeons, she's going to be really great for one-shotting heroes and bosses. She's great for Queen of Tide. There was a really nice speed team with her, one-shotting the Queen with like Shane and Clarence, and it's like a sub 40-second team. She can do the same thing with Witch. She can do the same thing with Gemini Dragon. So a fantastic hero. A little bit harder to build. Pretty gear intensive with her damage. You need the right amount of damage output, and you do need the necessary support heroes around her, which I think is why she falls into the B tier. But if you have those heroes, she can be top notch. Esrina is another one who is a hero that's kind of slept on. Her ignite damage on her S2 actually can do a lot of damage, especially paired with heroes, like Philidia or Trista. When you're fighting 1 or 2 specific characters or boss heroes, where the ignites can stack up, Esrina can do a really good amount of damage. She's more of a guild versus environment hero, but she does have some application in Tulpa, but Tulpa isn't really, a dungeon worth farming, so I do value her a little less, but she is a slept-on hero for guild versus environment bosses. So Augustine, talking about guild versus environment, he's basically a specialist in that area. Really good against the ancient relic tiles, because most of those heroes do not do crit. They can't crit. So anytime he is hit with a non-crit, he actually counterattacks and does splash damage to light heroes. So he's really good in those tiles. He does have application in faction challenges as well, but I have him in the B tier because he is like top-notch in his class for ancient relics. But other than that, he really doesn't have any use. So for guild versus environment, top tier. Celestial Cain has come around to be, part of a couple cheese compositions. He can also be used in Rift of Chaos Earth, along with Punk, to put up the Invincible to help you survive against the Earth boss's big AoE damage. He's also used in a couple cheese comps in Tulpa. He can be used in Ash Magisteria as well. So I think he's a pretty solid hero, but he's mainly used there in really specific compositions for cheeses. Same goes for Punk. Punk has some interesting application probably in Void Tower as well, if you have a lot of AoE damage dealers like Baron or Hitoshi, or even Onamaros, but he does have skill cooldown reduction, which is really nice. It's one of the few heroes in the game that have that. But I have him in the B tier just because he can scale all the way up to Rift of Chaos 2 to help with a Earth boss team paired with Celestial Cain. So Arundel, he used to be pretty good, then fell off, and now he's making a resurgence because he can be used in Witch of the Wind endgame. He's actually one of the stage 20 clearers. I'm sure he has some application in other areas as well, maybe even Queen. He can be used as a, subpar guild boss hero because he does multiple attacks if you're critting every single turn. So it helps with the rage mechanic. But yeah, he's kind of come alive with the ability to, be an endgame hero for Witch of the Wind 20. So heroes that you can invest in early game to help you with progression, and then they don't really lose their value to the end game, are great heroes to really put some of those valuable resources into. So Hakron is still probably a premier epic. He's obviously outclassed by Atara, but people who don't have Atara can certainly use Hakron. They have similar mechanics where they pass off their defense to the rest of your team to really help your team survive. So great progression champ in dungeon content. He can also be used in some Rift of Chaos Water teams. He's one of the few heroes that puts max health up on heroes, and it is a static ability. It doesn't go away. So Hakron is still a really good hero. It's just he's outclassed in every way by Atara. But if you don't have Atara, he is still very, very viable. He's also a synthesis hero, so you can get him for free, per se, which is something that can't be said for Atara. So really good hero here as well. So Hazel is a hero that has got some buffs in the past, which have now made her really good. She has a pretty interesting mechanic on her trait, where if you attack somebody 4 times, she has the ability to like AoE stun. So that's kind of nice, but she's a great healer, and she's a reviver as well. So she's really good in faction challenge content, and some people even use her in Void Tower Mythic. So she's a really good hero. I think there are just, better heroes within the game, like Flarence and stuff like that, where you get your heals and you get damage output. So she's more niche if you have heroes like that, but she definitely is not bad. And if you don't have any of those premier heroes, she's a really great support hero for sure. So Lunar Melissa has definitely fallen off because of other heroes that have been introduced in the game, and a lot of Void Tower hard is cleared just by raw damage output. But she's a really good hero in Void Tower hard clearing because she does an AoE taunt. So she becomes the target. It allows some of your squishy heroes to survive and just deal damage while they target Lunar Melissa. She's one of the few heroes in the game that have that AoE taunt. So she's probably a little undervalued. She's also one of the heroes that is preferred to be used in Guild versus Environment on some of the medium relics. They have those really annoying tiles where you have to have like a support hero. It's a really weak, rare hero, and if they die, you just lose. So a lot of people use her to, again, use those AoE taunts to protect that hero while you end up killing the rest of the heroes without your support guy dying. So she's niche, but she's really good in Void Tower hard and very good in Guild versus Environment on those medium relics. So I think she's worthy of a beat here. So Morgan has always been a pretty decent hero in PvP, but I also think he has some application in PvE as well, especially paired with Guan Yu. Now he becomes, like an A-tier hero when he has Guan Yu in the team, just because he does so many different joint attacks, which is proccing Guan Yu to go in and do additional joint attacks as well. You can slap him in a stun set, and he's going to be really good in Void Tower hard as well to help you clear there. It's going to be RNG related, so it might take you a couple tries, but in the end, I think he's a fantastic hero. Joint attack is something that is kind of rarer in the game, so to have a hero that has that is really nice. So yeah, Morgan is a really solid support hero to incorporate some stuns. So Philidia is a premier Guild versus Environment boss hero. She's also pretty good in Guild boss as well, but those are her two applications. She's just top tier in those areas though, which is why I have her in the B slot. Same thing with Scarlet. Scarlet has come along to be a really nice support hero for the Hyunwoo Barclay teams in Guild versus Environment. She's also a great hero in Guild boss as well. She's one of those premier heroes that's paired with Jacob and Marion Shadowblood, to do a bunch of joint attacks, keep the rage down on the boss while you're maximizing your damage with Jacob and Marion Shadowblood. So really great hero there. She can also be used in Witch of the Wind, to keep the rage bar down. And she probably even has some application in Tulpa as well for additional damage. But yeah, Guild versus Environment and Guild boss are definitely her two main spots. So Tidecaller is here. He's specifically a niche hero for Void Tower Mythic from a PvE setting. He's a great hero in PvP, but from PVE to pair with Onamaros in Void Tower Mythic is just so easy. That's one of the downsides of freeze, which Onamaros brings, is it can be removed if the hero is hit. It has a percentage chance. But with Tidecaller, freezes can't be removed. He also has an unresistible 2-turn freeze on his ultimate. So this is really great in Void Tower Mythic progression as well, where you don't need to worry about your focus. You can just worry about, health to keep him around, to keep the damage going with Onamaros. He probably has some application in Guild versus Environment as well on those pesky support tiles like I spoke with Lunar Melisa, but for the most part, he is a Void Tower Mythic specialist. So William is a hero that, used to be S tier, and he's still really good, but I do think he is outclassed by Radiant Pixie, just because she's easier to build, she's easier to book out. She also gives, specific buffs at the beginning of the round to your main damage dealer. William does have one thing over Radiant Pixie, and its basic abilities do additional damage, so he's still very viable, but I think Radiant Pixie does outclass him. He does AoE defense down, but it is not 100%. He does counterattacks, so he brings a lot to the table. And he can even pair with Radiant Pixie if you want. But still a great hero. Again, though, I just think he's outclassed. So in this S tier, these heroes are kind of like specialists, or I foresee some potential with them, like with some really niche kind of team setups. So I just want to preface that before I speak to this group. So Andros, he is only for Rift of Chaos Fire, and he is only for the Rift of Chaos, Rift of Chaos Earth boss. You're using your fire team. But he is only used with Arlo when Arlo is A5. So he does counterattacks, and he does have some damage mitigation. But the thing is he's too stat hungry. So if you don't have Arlo A5, you need enough focus to land your ignites to reduce the damage of the Rift of Chaos Earth boss, and it's just too hard. But if you have Arlo A5, he can be a premier damage dealer there because he does put up multiple ignites, which helps Arlo's damage. Also helps with the mitigation of damage on the Earth boss. And then he does counterattacks. So he can be a really nice damage dealer, but he does need Arlo A5, and that's why he's definitely in the C tier. So these two brothers, Aristal and Salgus, I think they have some application in Witch of the Wind and Gemini Dragon, but I have not had enough resources to kind of test this theory. Being able to allow someone to survive in those fights, even Witch of the Wind is probably pretty good. I think that alone gives itself some merit. This guy can bring lifesteal, and this guy saves one hero, but he also puts like suppression damage, crit rate down, things like that. He's definitely more of a PvE hero, but he does probably have some decent application in Witch, where Salgus I think is probably the better PvE hero because he brings lifesteal and shield and no positive effects, things like that. But that's all just theory. So Borden is here just because of his application in the Banker boss. Also, I think he has some application in bounty hunts, with heroes that have invincibility and things like that as well. But he is extremely niche. You don't need to book him. You can just bring him in for his ultimate ability. Bruzak, also pretty niche. He's mainly just a faction challenges hero. I use him in faction challenges. He helps keep your damage dealers alive because if they're hit with single target attacks, he will take the damage instead, and that's up to 2 times per turn, so that's kind of cool. So Daphne is a niche hero for Ash Magisteria on stages 16 and lower. Other than that, I really don't see any application for her. Ebon Shade, another niche hero who's definitely now been outclassed by Huntress Freya, but there is a cool composition for Rift of Chaos Fire Boss with him and Light Ophelia, but again, Like if you have Huntress Freya, you're just taking him out. The Stagnation stops the Rift of Chaos Fire Boss from doing bonus attacks if his rage gets too high, so that's kind of cool. But yeah, certainly niche. So Edicrus used to actually be like top tier, but he has since fallen off. He does a bunch of bonus attacks. He can stun and remove positive effects. So as a Void Tower clearer, he's an okay option, but he does need the stun set to really be maximized. And a lot of times, progressing in Gemini Dragon is the hardest thing to do for newer to mid-game players, which is why he's kind of tough. Where if you have these top 3 heroes, or even Baron or Hitoshi, who you get for free, you can clear Void Tower with these guys in stun set as well, but they don't need it to be good, where you do with Edicrus. So Pina is kind of like a mini Abaddon, except her damage output just isn't there. So I think this is more of a vanity project for people to see how much damage she can do as an epic, but I would not waste resources in here. I would even... She's probably borderline F, because she's going to need books to maximize her potential, and there's just so many better epic heroes to utilize, especially whenever you can farm a copy of Abaddon. Like, there would be no reason to build her, so she's arguably an F. Galeno is an okay hero for sustain. He does put up like blocks on your team. He also has an AoE silence, so he can be good in stun set, for some Void Tower progression. But he's certainly niche. He's along the lines of Edicrus needing that stun set, I think, to be really good in PVE. So that's really the role he fills. Man, I can't remember this guy's name. Shoot. Gajar? I think it's Gajar. Yeah, so he explodes poisons. He's really only used for a Gemini Dragon 16 and under composition, where he can explode some poisons. Other than that, not really used. Oh, I guess he can explode poisons in Queen of Tides as well, stage 16 and under, so that's another application. So Hassel is in here, mainly for his Void Tower clearing. He does have AoE defense down, which is really cool. He also gives bonus turns, crit rate up, things like that. So you can use him like on your Nathalias, on your Hitoshis, or Barons to help clear Void Tower. So that's his application here. Badmar, again, he's probably like a Pina. He's most likely an F, but he does have some application, utilizing Scarlet for the bleeds. He could be a pretty decent damage dealer, but again, he's going to need books, and to book Badmar just feels really bad. Here, Hori is like the poor man's version of Bocce, but since they're both epics, like, unless you've pulled 5 copies of Hori and no copies of Bocce, I will say that Hori can work in Rift of Chaos Fire Boss, probably up to stage 10, 11, maybe. But you're going to need some really good gear to do that. But he is a okay option in that slot if you have been very, very unlucky with Bocce pulls. So yeah. Hugh, he's okay as like a speed down hero that if you have stun set, he's probably okay, because he has the AoE speed down with possible stuns then from that stun set, and then he counterattacks anytime his speed is higher than the other heroes. So again, additional procs of stun possibly, but nowhere near the books in my opinion. So Kelowna does have some cheese applications as well. She can be paired with like Zoltan to cheese stage 17 and 18 of Gemini Dragon. She does have some application in faction challenges. I use her with Gavin, for her to put the invincible and the control immunity on Gavin to give him additional buffs, so he's ignoring defense and things like that, but certainly niche. Kayn, also niche, but he is niche in Rift of Chaos Water Boss Stage 3. So he is part of the endgame compositions. He does damage mitigation for your team, where he takes the brunt of the damage, which is kind of cool. but it helps, your accurately poison team stay alive long enough to have the poisons detonate and kill the boss. But that's really his only application. He's not really used anywhere else. Fire Melissa is just used in faction challenges. She is primarily a PvP hero, and a really good one at that. But other than that, yeah, she's just used in faction challenges as a pretty good fire damage dealer in, the Sylvan Woodlands, which is really lacking. Noella, she can be used in Ash Magisteria. Not very great, but she is an option. Aurak, he's primarily just a Tulpa hero. Pretty good, though, in Tulpa, but again, Tulpa is kind of a worthless dungeon to farm. Mila is a freeze hero, so she can be paired with Anamaros to help with keeping freezes up, like if you don't have a Tide Caller or something like that, to keep the damage flowing in Void Tower. Aramo is another one of those niche heroes like Andros, to be used for Rift of Chaos Earth boss. That's really his only application. He has True Strike on his masteries, which is a real bummer. If he had crit rate, he might have some other applications as well. But for the time being, he is just Rift of Chaos Earth boss, but I think there's plenty of other heroes that do that better. Orchi is, again, kind of like a PvP hero, but he can be used in Sylvan Woodlands, faction challenges, so he's pretty good there. He probably has some okay application in Queen of Tides early on, but primarily a PvP hero with some, niche uses in faction challenges and maybe lower stage dungeon. So Rosalind can be used in faction challenges. I used her early on for Rift of Chaos Fire. She does some pretty decent damage there, but completely outclassed by Bocce for sure. Other than that, I really haven't found a use for her. She might be okay in Guild versus Environment, on the Fire mini-boss if he's below 50% health. But yeah, really niche. Sacred Windstrex, I think, is an okay support hero. She does give damage up, and she extends buffs as you go through waves, so she's probably a decent Void Tower hard hero. She puts up the shields, she has heals, things like that, so probably okay in that area. I think she can be used early on for some of the lower dungeon stages as well, just as a general support hero because of her light affinity. Not being really weak against anything, so should be mentioned. Thomas is just like Arama or Andros. He is a counterattacker for Rift of Chaos Earth boss, a really bad one, probably towards the bottom tier. Silent is actually a pretty decent hero in PvP, but from a PvE perspective, she's kind of just used in faction challenges, but I use her there. Damage mitigation, she has a chance to completely nullify damage, which can be the make or break of certain faction challenge boss stages, to get you to the next tier where it's easier to farm. So I don't think she's an F, but she's really just used in those areas. Timmins, I actually had a video on Timmins with the Ash Magisteria dungeon, clearing really fast stage 18 with like Kaysen and things like that, but he is just an Ash Magisteria hero because a lot of his application pertains to bosses or elite heroes, which are usually the like waves in those dungeons. They're considered elite heroes, but you do need a certain amount of heroes alive for him to even activate his effects, which is why he's Ash specific. So Trista's really good in faction challenges. She's also pretty good in Guild versus Environment for certain ancient relics and things like that because she can stun. So it's really helpful to keep some of the damage at a minimum. She explodes, ignites, and things like that. So kind of cool, but pretty niche for those applications. So regular Windstrex is, a PvP hero. But she can be used in certain dungeons. One of the things that people tend to have an issue with is the speed requirements for some of these dungeons. That gets much easier as you progress throughout the game where you're farming more and more speed sets. But early on, if you need a hero to increase your speed and attack, she's a really great hero for that. So pairs nicely with Nathalia, putting up some buffs to trigger Nathalia's passive. really good with Baron and Hitoshi as well, so shouldn't be slept on. She also has an S2 that can completely reset the cooldown of something, so probably a little underrated, but she will fall off, towards the end game. So Virgil. Virgil is just a faction challenge hero. He does have the AoE silence. He can do some okay damage, if he's put like in an Everest set or something like that, but that's the only place that you'll use him. I forget this girl's name. It starts with a V. She's okay in Batwolf. That's, I think, her main application. There's probably some application for her early on in Earth Rift of Chaos boss as well. She puts up focus on people at the start of the round. She can also put up resistance down, so it's kind of meant for Rift of Chaos Earth boss, but she's a little too squishy, and she just doesn't do enough after, those two things that I just mentioned. So Zachary actually used to be Elite hero. I don't know if a lot of people know that, but yeah, he used to be an Elite, and then they bumped him up to Epic. He is a decent wave clear, as an Earth option, as a fire option. As I mentioned before, these two heroes, which are really good at wave clearing, struggle with fire. So he does have the ability to kind of help there with being a neutral affinity. Obviously, someone like Nathalia would be better there, but he can chain off a bunch of AoE damage with his passive, so that's kind of cool. Or with his trait, I think it's his trait. So yeah, not bad, but certainly outclassed by all of these other heroes. And then in the F tier, these heroes are just either PvP specific, or they just don't really have any kind of application because they're too RNG, or there's other heroes within the Epic slot that are just better versions of them. So Aurea, taunts and things like that don't really have any application in PvE other than guild versus environment, and it's just like one or two places, and her spot there just ain't worth it. Crixus, what a letdown. PvP hero specific. Harbeg stinks. Jabez, purely PvP. Karami, PvP. Same thing with Kyle. Lodric, I guess you can make a case, but I just don't think there's enough of it to push him up to the C tier. Lightwing Zac, PvP. Mognar, terrible RNG. Akubi, terrible RNG. Royce, all PvP. I forget this guy's name as well. Maybe starts with an R. I don't know. Ricard, that's what it is. PvP hero. He used to be PvE, but they kind of nerfed him. Tucker, terrible everywhere. Urzag, yeah, you can't really use him, I don't think. Yeah, just garbage in general. Vance is PvP, and then Zatlux is just a worse version of Hitoshi. So anyway, guys, that is the PvE tier list for epics. I hope this helped. Again, this is my opinion. It's supposed to be fun, but I think most of these gradings people are going to agree with. If not, comment below, but be respectful. All right, that's all I got. I'll catch you on the next one. See ya.